All right. Well, I'm going to kick it off. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, Jan. This is a really great event. And I want to say that to the previous speaker, Consensus had the privilege of being in one of the accelerators of the Dubai Financial Center. So confirming that it's a very dynamic space. So today I'm going to talk to you about social impact and blockchain. What I will do is give you a general overview and then dive into some of the use cases that we see emerging that I think would be interesting to share today. So as I said, my name is Vanessa Grellet. I'm an executive director. I'm actually the head of the Global Alliances and Channels, but I'm also the president of the Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition, which was started about 3 years ago, where we bring together technologists, impact investors, government to really test and iterate use cases for blockchain and social impact. We have an annual conference each year. We do an annual event for Earth Day, and we have an annual incubator, which this year is going to focus on supply chains. So briefly, to give you an overview of where we see the most activity in in social impact. The members of our Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition initially told us that they wanted to focus on 4 key areas. The first one was identity and vulnerable populations. As it's been alluded to, 1 billion people in the world don't have identity today, and therefore don't have access to bank accounts, don't have the possibility to attest of their credit worthiness. We also have a lot of people who are being displaced all over the world, and a very large refugee populations for which, solutions need to be found. So our members thought that, the identity issue was key for the development of blockchain solution. Adjacent to that is financial inclusion. If you don't have identity, it's very hard for you to access a bank account and to save money or to be able to get a loan. So access to financial institution or access to alternative means of finance is really key, and people think that blockchain can play a big role, either whether it's remittances or just accessing more financial creditworthiness. The third one is supply chain. As we've seen today, and with COVID, a lot of the supply chains are not very transparent. And it's a big concern for a lot of manufacturing companies, for a lot of consumer-facing companies, where their clients are requesting that the goods that they produce are created in a fair and transparent manner, being that there's no human trafficking in the supply chain, there's no human right violation, that there's a guarantee that the products are ethically sourced. So in that space, blockchain can bring some transparency and some traceability solutions. The fourth one is energy and environment. There's been a lot of concerns about blockchain itself and its sustainability because, the proof of work mechanism of Bitcoin and Ethereum is energy intensive. But in blockchain, some people are trying to focus on that. And for Ethereum, for example, Ethereum is going from proof of work to proof of stake. But there are also other solutions that I'll give some examples of that are focusing on carbon offset and streamlining the way that we consume energy. So those were the 4 first key areas. And then over the years, a few other areas emerged, which I think are pretty exciting. The first one is how to support human rights activists and activists in general. So things like fake news, freedom of speech, the security and confidentiality about the information that these human rights groups are trying to, show to the world. There's a lot of projects in that area. Then the second one is democracy and voting. As you've seen in my country right now, there's a lot of issues and questions about whether the voting process is fair and transparent. And there are some projects that are trying to tackle this to get electronic voting secured by blockchain. It's an emerging area, but it's gaining some traction. And then on the philanthropic side, we've seen that a lot of donors or impact investors really want to see how their money is used, right? And ensuring that it's not diverted for other purposes. Same thing when governments give large grants, et cetera. So there are solutions through the blockchain that allow you to trace the origin of the funds and the usage, and also measure the impact of that. And finally, on the education side, and I think it was alluded to prior to my speech, is that education is going to be transformed dramatically in the coming years, and we've seen the impact of COVID. And so the ability to attest with security and transparency of your skills, your continued education, and your diplomas is really important. So moving on to sort of the key use cases that I'm going to go through. I'm going to start with payments, CBDCs, and financial inclusion. Because of the advent of Libra last year, it has triggered a lot of projects and a lot of initiatives from governments, from incumbent companies, and from startups. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of what the innovation is in that space. So the first one is stablecoins. We know that Libra is going to announce their solution in January. And for those who are not well versed in stablecoins, what are they? They are cryptocurrencies that are backed by either another fiat, so dollar or yen or euro. They can also be backed by other cryptocurrencies, or they can be purely based on algorithms and mathematical calculations. So one of the two of the most famous existing stablecoins are MakerDAO and USDC. MakerDAO has a stablecoin called DAI, which is cryptocurrency backed, and then USDC, which is one-to-one to the US dollar, and that Visa is currently collaborating with. Then we have Libra, who just initially started, and initially Libra was going to be backed by a basket of fiat currencies, and that created a lot of emotion in the government and central bank circles to understand what would be the implications of such a huge player with 2 billion customers who could give access to this cryptocurrency globally. So a huge impact. And then other projects like Cello, who is creating a stablecoin that allows you to transact internationally seamlessly. So we've seen the emergence of these players, but we've also seen the emergence of more traditional players that are coming into the space. So as my previous speaker said, Visa, PayPal are really getting into the space. Square has been involved for a while, and JP Morgan, who created Quorum, which Consensus just acquired, has something called JPM Coin, which allows interbank settlements. So what do these stable coins allow you to do? So basically, if you have a wallet and another person also has a digital wallet, you're able to send the store of value across borders seamlessly, instantaneously, without counterparty risk. And that's really, really important, and that's really the innovation. So it allows you to do remittances at a very low price compared to other existing solutions where, the highest can go up to 15% of the amount that's been sent. So that's really exciting. There are some issues that need to be dealt with. Is, if I send you a cryptocurrency, but in my country I can't buy anything with the cryptocurrency, how do I transfer it into the local currency? So that's sort of the fiat to crypto on-ramp issues. And then there's a lot of questions around AML and KYC and reaching the last mile. And those are really the issues that we are trying to tackle on the social impact side. Is how do you reach someone who's in a place with low connectivity, no cell phone, no identity? How do we get them value across through aid or through direct payments? And so I think there will be a lot of innovation in that side. I'm going to give a few examples afterwards, but wanted to touch base on also what the governments are doing. There's over 80 central banks that are looking at CBDC. So a CBDC is a central backed digital currency. And it's used in three real use cases. One is wholesale payments, which is more intrabank. The second one is retail payments, so that you're allowed to pay directly to individuals, and individuals can use that CBDC like they use cash. And then there's the idea that you could use it also for cross-border payments. Consensus has been involved with 6 central banks for the time being and is experimenting in all 3 areas. And so there's the promise that through CBDC or stablecoins, we'll be able to reach the last mile, to bring in people into financial inclusion, that having access to this growing digital economy is going to include more people. And that cash currently doesn't allow for this innovation. So we're far from all the central banks issuing right now the CBDCs. We're also part of the WEF working group on digital currencies. And I think there's a lot of exploration, a lot of excitement, and a lot of thought leadership going into this. But I think it will take several years in order to see an evolution. But I think that will be sort of our future together. So I'll give you just one example of how cryptocurrencies was used for distribution of aid. That was in Vanuatu with Oxfam. They used the MakerDAO's cryptocurrency stablecoin DAI. And basically, what was really important for that project, which is expanding, is that the experience of the citizens receiving the aid was the same as if they were, receiving money, and their dignity and the way they shopped and the way they engaged with the world was not changed. So we think that's really important because it allowed faster onboarding of the citizens into that project. And it allowed for a lot of cost efficiencies. People were engaged and were able to use that Android app very, very quickly. So I think, when you think about the last mile and social impact is measuring how effective all these blockchain-based solutions are. Another one is the World Food Program, who has an amazing project called Building Blocks that started with aid disbursement in Jordan. Basically, they were able to transfer directly the aid from WFP to the place of disbursement and the supermarkets that the refugees had access to. It was a very sophisticated program where refugees are identified by their iris scan because they're all in a camp and they have access to specific areas where they can go and shop. But by doing that, by using a cryptocurrency and transferring value through cryptocurrency, the WFP was allowed to save a lot of money, not having to go through local banks and correspondent banks to transfer the assets. The second thing I want to touch upon is sustainable supply chains. I think it's a really growing area of social impact, and we see a lot of examples there. I'll give a few. The first one was a project we did with the World Wildlife Fund to track and trace a red tuna in Fiji. So red tuna is quite an expensive item, and people want to make sure of the quality of the tuna and want to make sure that it was sustainably sourced. As you know, in the fishing industry, there's a lot of issues around human rights abuse, but also issues around how the fish is sourced and how the fish is brought to different places in the world, making sure that there's no break in the temperature chain, etc. And so via blockchain and IoT devices, we were able to do that and demonstrated, where the fish came from, how it was sourced, how it was shipped, and giving comfort to the consumers that it was ethically sourced. So there's a lot of, this is one of the projects, there's a lot of projects that are going on right now in the world around fishing or coffee or other goods that are being manufactured, where we want to make sure that, one, it's ethically sourced, but also trying to rebalance a little bit the economics to make sure that people who are the producers also get their fair share. We did another project with Levi's and Harvard around, and New America around apparel workers' rights, where we did a pilot in Mexico to test some confidential surveys that they were doing with their workers. So in order to see if there's any abuse in a factory, there's a standard survey that people take that ask the workers about their work conditions. But the issue is, if they're being the source of abuse, they're often scared to say what's happening, et cetera. So through a blockchain system, we were allowed to get the information and the survey out completely confidentially, and ensuring that the workers understood that they're able to say if there is an issue, and increase the quality of the auditors of the factory to make sure that the health and safety of the workers was maintained. The third use case I want to speak about, which is dear to my heart, is a transparency use case with corruption. This was actually a pilot from the World Economic Forum, which was done on the Ethereum public blockchain to solve for an issue around corruption. And this specific case was around corruption for public schools. So they had an issue where the food that was provided to the children and the meals that were provided to the children were provided at a very unusual high cost. And they realized that, for example, the chicken was purchased at 50% more than and invoiced to the school at 50% higher price than the normal price. And so the WEF and the government of Colombia did this pilot on the public chain to understand the entire procurement process and increase the transparency and the integrity of the records. So from the bidding to the choice of the bidders to the disclosure, they created a system where it was much more difficult for people to change their records, change the bids that they put in, after colluding, et cetera, and bringing a lot of more transparency. There's an entire report on the World Economic Forum website that you can see, and really get you to understand all the challenges of blockchain, but also all the benefits. And finally, this will be my last example. I want to talk a little bit about climate change, and carbon. So there's a lot of projects around our carbon footprint. As you know, a lot of companies have been asked by their shareholders to justify their carbon assumption and ensure that they have a sustainable business. So large companies like KPMG, like Microsoft, are committing to being carbon neutral in the future. But it's very hard as a very large company to do that and to understand all your carbon footprint and how you can offset it. So KPMG has been working with All Infra and Context Labs to announce a new solution that allows organizations to measure, report, and offset greenhouse emissions. So it's called the Climate Accounting Infrastructure, and it's a transparent platform to complement the organization's existing systems, including, IoT, sensors, and other data sources and oracles that you can use to measure your carbon footprint. So very exciting developments. They're not the only ones. Again, there's a lot of projects, and I think it's very exciting that there's a lot of projects. And so if you want to learn more, they have issued, I think, a report on it, and you can also contact me. The last example. Oh, okay, I'm done. If that was my last example. Is a Bounties network where we incentivize people in the Philippines to clean up ocean trash. And so people were paid directly with cryptocurrencies, were able to take photos, timestamp them, geolocate them, and say that they had cleaned up this amount of trash, and being able to be paid directly.
Okay. All right, Vanessa, thank you so much. For me, the social impact has always intrigued me the most when it comes to blockchain technology. And I think you gave just from your point of view, from the consensus point of view, like a great overview of all the impact areas and the current status about identity, financial inclusion, and so forth. Thank you so much. For me, it was very interesting to learn the current status and all the projects that are currently being executed globally. You are currently executing a variety of projects with organizations like the World Wildlife Fund, with the World Food Programme, Oxfam, and so forth. Of course, very curious to learn what will happen in the upcoming year. What is the project that you are the most excited about? The social impact project.
So we're going to do a very large supply chain incubator, and I think that's one area that I feel is very exciting, because there's so much that you can change in supply chains with blockchain solutions. So we'll see what comes out of this incubator and how it can help existing solutions or create new solutions.
Especially now with the corona crisis, we've seen how vulnerable the supply chains actually are on the global perspective. You're working a lot with all kinds of organizations on the global scale. What is the key reason why organizations maybe are still hesitant to actually join a blockchain collaboration effort? Why are they not participating? Are there any reasons that you still have to, or obstructions that you still need to tackle?
So I think there are several layers. One is the misconception with, general cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. So I think we're a little bit past that, but there's still some legacy, misperception. The second one is the regulatory environment. People, if they're not sure that they can execute a project in payments, et cetera, they're going to be a little bit hesitant. The third one is not every company has a very large IT team that they can dedicate to innovation. And so going beyond the pilot is something that requires a real investment by the company. It's a new software they're deploying, right? And so at the beginning of blockchain, there were not a lot of off-the-shelf solutions, which was easy for companies to deploy. I think we are past that, and we are getting more solutions out there that people can just use, and not everyone needs to create their own solution. I think that's something that's a big hurdle that we've passed. But those are the things people think about.
Yeah.
And also the return on investment, of course.
Of course. Yeah, in the end, we all need to make money, of course. So last year, we still had a physical Dutch blockchain week. And we also hosted a session with people from the Blockchain for Social Impact initiative, where you're also part of. You hosted a virtual event in Q2 this year. We still hear from people via the social media channels, via our chat box, that people, they're quite interested in this initiative. Are there any ways how they can actually engage in these initiatives? Is there like an upcoming event or a hackathon or anything like that?
Yes, so we'll be announcing our Earth Day event on April 22nd. So that will be a live stream event. If you want to speak at this event, if you want to participate, if you want to volunteer, we're all volunteers in this organization. So we're happy to take any help we can. So that's one. The second one is the upcoming incubator that's going to start in February. If you have an idea, if you're a hacker or a social entrepreneur or an impact fund and you want to participate as a mentor or as a participant, you can sign up, and I'll be sharing that. And you can also become a member and really drive the conversation on certain sectors. Let's say you want to drive forward projects in the sustainability and climate change. We have a dedicated group for that.
Wonderful. Vanessa Grellet, thank you so much for joining us from New York City. I was really impressed by your presentation. We will share the hyperlinks also about the initiative later on at our social media channels. Thanks again. Keep on doing all the great work, and we hope to meet you soon in the Netherlands in a physical form.
I hope so too.
All right. Take care. Thanks.